Eldoria did not fall to overwhelming force or cunning generals, nor did its mighty walls crumble beneath the weight of siege engines or the relentless march of enemy legions. For centuries, the kingdom had stood as a beacon of strength and unity, its people proud and its rulers wise. Yet, in the end, it was not the clash of swords or the roar of battle that brought Eldoria to its knees. Instead, the fate of the realm was sealed by a single act of betrayal, a quiet treachery that crept through the heart of the kingdom like a shadow at dusk, unseen and unsuspected by those who trusted most. On the eve of battle, as the city's defenders braced themselves for the coming storm, the king's trusted trademaster, Loris, made a fateful decision. Driven by ambition and the promise of riches, he met with agents of the Empire in a hidden chamber, far from the eyes of loyal subjects. There, in the flickering candlelight, Loris exchanged the kingdom's most guarded secrets: maps of the city's defenses, patrol schedules, and the signal to open a concealed gate, for a heavy purse of gold and the whispered assurance of power. Under a moonless sky, with only the distant hoot of an owl to bear witness, Loris handed over the documents. The Empire's spies vanished into the night, clutching the keys to Eldoria's undoing. The city, still unaware, slept behind its ancient walls, never suspecting that its fate had already been decided in the shadows. While King Valen pored over battle plans by candlelight, determined to repel the enemy with courage and strategy, the true danger lay not outside the gates, but within. The enemy, armed with knowledge meant only for the king's most trusted, already held the key to the city's heart. The defenders prepared for a frontal assault, never imagining that the walls they guarded so fiercely would be opened from within. The Empire's siege, with its thunderous drums and blazing torches, was nothing more than a grand distraction. As the city's attention was fixed on the looming threat beyond the walls, a handful of enemy soldiers slipped silently through the open gate, guided by the very secrets Loris had sold. The real victory came not with a triumphant charge, but with a lock turned quietly in the shadows, and the silent passage of foes into the sleeping city. In a single night, centuries of honor and trust unraveled. Eldoria's proud banners fell, not to the might of an invading army, but to the fracture of loyalty within. The kingdom's legacy, built on faith and unity, was undone by the greed of one man, a secret pact that would echo through history as the true cause of Eldoria's fall. King Valen, the Lion of Eldoria, was a ruler forged by hardship. Born into a time of turmoil, he witnessed the suffering of his people from a young age. The scars of war and famine shaped his resolve, teaching him that true strength lay not in conquest, but in compassion and wisdom. As he grew, Valen became known for his unwavering sense of justice and his deep empathy for the common folk. He was not a king who ruled from afar, but one who walked among his people, learning their stories and sharing in their burdens. His fairness was legendary, earning him the love and loyalty of his subjects. Valen listened to the grievances of farmers and merchants alike, settling disputes with a gentle but firm hand. He believed that a kingdom's true wealth was measured not in gold or jewels, but in the happiness and unity of its people. Under his guidance, Eldoria became a place where justice was not reserved for the powerful, but extended to even the humblest villager. He walked among his people, valuing their spirit above gold. In the bustling markets, he would pause to speak with artisans and children, offering words of encouragement and hope. His presence was a reminder that the crown was not a symbol of distance, but of duty. The people of Eldoria saw in Valen a leader who truly cared for their well-being, and in return, they offered him their unwavering trust. Eldoria thrived under his rule, its people resilient, its lands bountiful, its freedom fiercely guarded. The fields yielded rich harvests, and the towns bustled with life and laughter. Festivals filled the streets with music, and the bonds of community grew ever stronger. Yet, beneath this prosperity, Valen remained vigilant, knowing that peace was a fragile gift, easily threatened by the ambitions of others. Beyond Eldoria's borders, the Empire loomed, a vast and relentless force, driven by hunger for power and resources. To the Empire, Eldoria was little more than a prize to be claimed, its fertile lands and hard-working people seen as assets to be exploited. The shadow of invasion grew longer with each passing season, and whispers of war echoed through the valleys. Valen fortified his kingdom, not out of love for war, but to protect his people's way of life. He strengthened the castle walls, trained his soldiers, and called upon the courage of every citizen. The king knew that the coming storm would test not only their defenses, but the very spirit of Eldoria. He prepared his people, urging them to stand together, for unity would be their greatest shield. The coming fight was not just for land, but for the right of a small community to exist freely. Eldoria's struggle was a stand against oppression, a declaration that even the smallest kingdom had the right to chart its own destiny. The villagers, once farmers and craftsmen, now stood ready to defend their homes, inspired by Valen's courage and conviction. Against the Empire's cold logic, Valen stood as a guardian of hope. He reminded his people that their strength came not from the size of their army, but from the unity of their hearts. In the face of overwhelming odds, he inspired them to believe that freedom was worth any sacrifice, and that hope could outshine even the darkest threat. The fate of Eldoria would test the strength of both king and kingdom. As dawn broke over the castle walls, Valen and his people stood ready, not just to defend their land, but to prove that courage, unity, and hope could shape the destiny of a nation. The Empire's conquest began as a slow tide: trade demands, political pressure, and veiled threats. Valen refused to surrender Eldoria's soul for imperial promises. The Empire escalated, funding bandits, cutting trade, and tightening its grip. When diplomacy failed, legions marched, an unstoppable force, their banners casting fear across Eldoria's fields. Stories of imperial brutality haunted the people, but Valen's courage inspired unity. Tools became weapons, homes became fortresses, and hope clung to the city's great walls. The storm had arrived, and Eldoria would face it together. Their resolve would be tested as never before. As dusk fell, the Empire's siege began with a mournful horn and a sea of crimson banners. Catapults hurled stones into the city, shattering calm and sowing terror. This was psychological warfare, breaking spirit before breaking walls. Valen stood on the parapet, sharing danger and resolve with his soldiers. His presence steadied the defenders, reminding them of what they fought for. The Imperial legions advanced in silent, relentless formations. Every defender knew this night would decide their world's fate. The kingdom's future hung in the balance. As the legions reached the walls, Valen seized the initiative. He led a daring cavalry charge through the main gate, his sword blazing in the night. The surprise broke the Imperial ranks, giving Eldoria a fleeting hope. Valen fought at the front, seeking the enemy commander, his courage a rallying cry. But the Empire's discipline prevailed. Reserves flanked the cavalry, closing the trap. Valen ordered a retreat. Many would not return. The charge became a desperate struggle for survival, a testament to Eldoria's spirit. The king and his knights returned, battered but unbroken. The true turning point came not at the main gate, but from within. The secret postern gate, betrayed by Loris, was opened to Imperial soldiers. Defenders were ambushed from behind. Panic and confusion spread. The city's defenses crumbled as the enemy poured in, dissolving order into chaos. Valen realized the depth of betrayal. His efforts at the front had been in vain. He rushed to contain the breach, but the city was already lost. Resistance splintered into desperate skirmishes. Eldoria was being consumed from the inside out. With the city breached, Valen made his last stand in the central plaza. No longer a king but a lone warrior, he fought with the last of his guard. Exhausted yet unyielding, Valen's defiance became legend. He refused capture, determined to die on his feet. The final battle was brutal. Valen fell to a common soldier's spear. As the Empire's banners rose, his last thoughts were of Eldoria's green hills. He had lost the kingdom, but honored it with his life. His final roar echoed in the hearts of his people. As the first pale light of dawn crept over the horizon, it revealed a city transformed beyond recognition. Eldoria, once a beacon of hope and prosperity, now lay in utter devastation. The proud stone walls that had stood for centuries were shattered and breached, their defenses overwhelmed by the relentless assault. The streets, once alive with laughter and commerce, were now eerily silent, littered with the remnants of a desperate struggle. Smoke curled from the ruins, and the air was thick with the scent of ash and loss. The city had become a graveyard, haunted by memories of what once was. As the sun rose higher, the survivors, those few who had managed to endure the night, emerged from hiding. They stepped into a world that no longer belonged to them. The Empire's banners hung from every tower, and Imperial soldiers marched through the streets, enforcing a new and merciless order. Overnight, the freedom the people of Eldoria had cherished was stripped away. Imperial law replaced their own, and the customs and traditions that had defined their lives were suddenly forbidden. The conquerors seized the city's resources, leaving the people impoverished and powerless in their own homeland. Grief hung heavy in the air. The loss of King Valen, who had been both a leader and a symbol of hope, left the people directionless and heartbroken. Families gathered in the ruins, mourning not only their loved ones but the death of their way of life. The city's spirit seemed broken, its people united only by their shared sorrow and the uncertainty of what the future would bring. Yet, even in defeat, stories began to spread, whispers of King Valen's final stand. Though he fell in battle, his courage and sacrifice became the stuff of legend. A tale passed quietly from one survivor to another. His bravery offered a glimmer of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest hour, there had been resistance. The empty throne and shattered crown served as painful reminders of all that had been lost. The royal halls, once filled with music and celebration, now echoed with silence. The symbols of Eldoria's sovereignty were abandoned, left to gather dust and decay as the Empire tightened its grip. In the days that followed, the Empire moved swiftly to erase Eldoria from history. Maps were redrawn, the city's name scratched out or replaced with Imperial designations. Speaking of Eldoria became a crime, and its memory was driven underground, surviving only in secret stories and hidden keepsakes. The conquerors targeted every trace of the kingdom's past. Books and scrolls were burned, monuments toppled, and artifacts seized or destroyed. The Empire's goal was clear: to erase not just the city, but the very idea of Eldoria from the hearts and minds of its people. The occupation was not only physical, but cultural and spiritual. The Empire sought to crush the kingdom's identity, to extinguish the hope that had once burned so brightly. Statues were pulled down, banners torn, and the city's proud history rewritten by the victors. All that remained were faded banners fluttering in the wind, torn flags clinging to broken walls, and the memory of torches that once lit the night. The city's legacy seemed destined to fade into oblivion, its story nearly lost to time. And so, as the ashen sunrise cast its pale light over the devastated landscape, a new era began, one marked by silence, sorrow, and the long dark night of oppression. Yet beneath the ashes, the faintest embers of hope still glowed, waiting for the day they might ignite once more. The Empire conquered the land, but not the spirit of Eldoria's people. Valen's last stand became legend, whispered in secret, fueling quiet rebellion. His refusal to bow inspired generations, keeping hope alive beneath imperial rule. The story of the Lion of Eldoria endured, a symbol of courage and identity. True victory, it seemed, was not measured in territory, but in the legacy left behind. Even in defeat, Valen's spirit proved indomitable. His legend reminds us, the human spirit can outlast even the darkest night.